What's up, YouTube? This will be a little project introduction for my new 1989 FJ62. Cosmetically, it's largely great besides a little patina, which I like, and some drip rail rust, which shouldn't be too bad to repair. We'll see. But here she is. She has some cool Texas cruiser history. An old picture of it with a bunch of cool cruisers of Texas gear, such as a roof rack. But yeah, it's just shy of 300,000 miles. A lot of the interior stuff's taken apart, but it's all here. Don't know why the guy did that. And the one unfortunate thing, besides the drip rail rust, is that I've compression tested it, and spoiler alert, half of the cylinders had 0 compression. I'm going to attempt to get to the bottom of that in this video. Alright, I have a hose and a funnel and some Marvel Mystery Oil. Let's see if it makes it into the cylinder. Alright, I poured Marvel Mystery Oil into all the cylinders. Used probably half of it. Did a few glugs in the first 3 because they had some compression, and like 5 glugs in the rear 3 because they had 0. So I'm gonna let them sit for 24 hours. Alright, I ended up actually putting the plugs back, and since a stuck valve or 3 are a possibility, I'm gonna go ahead and pop the valve cover off and see what it looks like when I crank. Good Lord, I think stuck valves is a good possibility. Oil change? Never heard of her. Oh my gosh. This thing was run into the ground. Well, I guess we'll see if some valves back there move. Look, there's crust. Yeah, that's brutal. Huh, well, let's see if we can fix this. It's the valve cover. That looks great too. Awesome. Just gonna start blasting. I think next I'm going to remove the rocker assembly, get it all cleaned and greased up, or oiled up, and then start giving each valve some attention. See if we can free this sucker up. I basically unloaded a can of PB Blaster at this thing. I'm going to do some cranking and see what's stuck, if it's a rocker assembly, whatever. Well, let's see what we have. Alright, sprayed a bunch of PB Blaster at it. Seems like it's freeing stuff up. I mean, these rockers that were seized now have some movement. Kind of shocking, but alright, I'll crank it again. I think the reason it had no compression in the rear 3 cylinders was the rocker shaft was seized. I've basically emptied a can of PB Blaster at it and hit him with dead blow. Alright, I dumped some more penetrating oil at it. Let's do a little more cranking. See that valve coming up? That is crazy. So I might pop that rocker assembly off, take it apart, and put it on the wire wheel for a while. Clean everything up, shop vac out the whole head, put a bunch of Seafoam and Marvel Mystery Oil in the oil. I took the rocker assembly off. You can see there's a bunch of sconge in there. Hoping that'll clean up. I'll scrub that while the rocker assembly is soaking in something. I think this is our problem because none of those valves are still stuck in. Yeah, these should move more freely than that. Rear ones are toast. So I'll get this soaking in something. Not sure what, but toss it in the parts washer initially. Bang my line for the finest Land Cruiser service. I pressed apart the rocker assembly, wire wheeled everything. Now I'm going to go ahead and run some emery cloth on the inside of these and then put it back together, oil it up. And my GoPro is about out of battery again, so I'm not going to film it, but I will also hit this whole area with a wire brush and some WD-40 and a shop vac. Try to get it all cleaned up. So I'm gonna go charge the GoPro. Just a little update before I go have dinner. I went crazy with a wire brush, WD-40, and some shop rags in here. Took all the push rods out, put them on the wire wheeled those studs, gave everything a good rotella bath. Not the valves yet, but that's coming. Everything got a rotella bath, so this is ready to go. Right now I'm just working on unseizing the last thing, which is the valve adjustment nuts and screws. These are kind of stuck, so I'm working them, getting them out before I put the whole thing in. When I'm done with the rocker assembly, I'm going to clean it all up, toss it in the engine bay, then pull the spark plugs and lash the valves. Alright, I got everything prepped. She's ready to go on. Got the grooves all lined up. Well, that's all for tonight. Got the rocker assembly on, got the spark plugs out, ready to lash the valves tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning I just need to lash the valves and then I can compression test it. Alright, it's the next morning. I had to pull some stuff to gain access to the crank pulley so I can turn the engine over and find top dead center. I turned my light off, but I have it pointing at the little window on the bell housing. So have it turned over now, ready to adjust the first set of valves. It's on cylinder 1, top dead center. One thing that's concerning me and making me think some lifters are stuck is cylinder 6 is kind of tight, and it shouldn't be. So poured a bunch of Marvel Mystery Oil in there. Hopefully that takes care of that. But for now, I'll adjust the valves I can and check that. All right. Valves are lashed. Let's see if she goes through the firing order right. Yes, they're all moving. Well, not all of them, but valves are moving for the first time. Go ahead and pour the rest of the Marvel Mystery Oil on this, and then can compression test. Might as well church up the fan shroud a little bit while it's out. That's better. Time to resto the valve cover. Alright, now I'm going to attack this valve cover. There's a lot of loose gunk, so my first order of business will be scraping and brushing all that off and into a trash can. The valve cover cleaned up pretty nicely. I'm going to leave the patina on it because it matches the patina on the exterior. Alright, I went ahead and put everything back except the plug wires. Alright, I figured I'd do double duty, and while cranking it to see if there's oil pressure, I'll compression test it again. Here goes nothing. Alright, cool. 5 hits of the starter, and we're at 120. Cylinder 2. Eight hits of the starter. Not bad. 130. Cylinder 3. Not optimal. I just did it again on cylinder 3 because I forgot to take a picture with my phone of the compression, and it hit 120 right off the bat, so I'm going to call it 120. Cylinder 4. Almost 100, but I'm sure we could bump that number up by trying it again. Bumped it up to 100 with a few more cranks. I'm sure this one will grow as well with actual heat and a little bit of actual use, but for now 100 is what I'm gonna have to live with. Alright, cylinder 5. Cylinder 5 is still 0. Let's see about cylinder 6. Maybe these lifters didn't quite free up all the way. Alright, number 6. If you recall, this one also had stuck lifters. 5, which had 0 just now, had 1, and 6 had 2. So let's see how this goes. Alright, we gave it a valiant effort, but cylinders 5 and 6 still have no compression. Alright, I couldn't end the video on a note like that after that disappointing compression test. The first 4 cylinders were great, rear 2 not so great. So I'm going to pop the valve cover off again and hopefully find that the lifters are just stuck again. In which case, I will use more Marvel Mystery Oil and more hammer. Doesn't look too bad, but I poured some Marvel Mystery Oil in the vicinity of the naughty cylinders, so let's see if that made any difference. I think these two might be the problem, but I'll have to review the footage. Alright, it looks like rockers 10 and 11 aren't rocking, so I'm going to try to do something about that. Alright, I banged on rocker number 10's little adjuster. I banged on rocker 10's adjuster screw a little bit, and it opened the valve. The valve was in fact open because of the lifter. Number 11's wasn't the case, but I think it might be actually up on the cam lobe. So I poured 8 ounces of Marvel Mystery Oil down there. Now I'm going to give her another crank and see what happens. again. Poured more MMO, did more hammering. This one needs to be lashed again. Its clearance is way too huge, but let's see. I'll pour a little bit of this in there too. Valve number 10 right here, the lash was super loose, so I brought it closer to spec. Should be at spec now. This one seems a little tight, but that could be just the lifter talking. And totally mushroomed out these while doing this, but whatever. I think I'm making a little progress. Alright, I've done a few more rounds of hammering and Marvel Mystery oiling. I think I freed up this lifter on cylinder 5. Wasn't completely loose, but it didn't require any movement before it became free. So now I'm just working on cylinder 6. I'm gonna compression test cylinder 5 now to see where we're at. All right, compression test cylinder 5 after I think I freed the intake lifter. Alright, we clearly have compression. That was not the sound of freewheeling. I'm excited. Alright, my thought process was correct. I got cylinder 5 freed. All it took was a whole thing of Marvel Mystery Oil, and I poured some WD-40 in there as well. Cranked it, poured the goo down in there, and hammered it back down. Really mushroomed out that adjuster, but I'm hopefully going to be able to buy those. Now I've done the same with cylinder 6, or I had been doing it with 6 too, but 6 is more stubborn, and each time it's getting easier to hammer down, so I think one of these times soon, I've probably done it 4 or 5 times since I did the cylinder 5 compression test. Hopefully one of these times it'll stay up and then I can get a good compression reading on it, so I'll keep at it. Alright, I think that was the time. Alright, let's give cylinder 6 10 cranks, see where we're at. Try this again. I have a little bit of compression now, so let's see if I can improve upon that. Alright, I didn't change anything and the compression bumped up quite a bit, so let's see if we can make that go a little better. We're getting up there. Alright, since the compression magically raised 30 psi, I'm gonna try it again, see if I can get it a little higher. Nope, still just 90. So there's certain room for improvement, but that's a whole lot better than 0. I'm gonna call that a success. I popped the valve cover back on just to keep the moisture out. I'll be in there again. Took the battery off to trickle charge. And I'd call that a success. We went from 70 psi to 120 in cylinder 1, 75 to 130 in cylinder 2, 80 to 120 in cylinder 3, and 0 to 100 in cylinder 4, Cylinder 5 went, this is from yesterday, cylinder 5 went from 0 to, let's see, from 0 to 120. And cylinder 6 went from 0 to 30, and then that, and then that, and then that, and then that's where I left off. I'm sure it has more in it, but I think that's enough proof for now for me to go forward with this FJ62 build, get the fuel tank reconditioned, make sure it has spark, and do all sorts of other fun stuff. Gonna start checking for spark today, and then hopefully crank it. There's some proof that it's been sitting a hot minute. Alright, so I disconnected the igniter from the coil just to see if the issue is upstream or downstream of the igniter. And with the key on, the igniter is putting 12.05 volts to the coil. So I haven't actually checked if it has spark or not. I was just going off the previous owner's guesstimate, but I'm gonna reconnect the igniter and try that again now that I know that it is somewhere between here and the plug itself. All right, go. Alright, so now we know it clearly has spark. I'm going to throw some plugs from a 2F on here, hope they're gapped right, just because they look better than the plugs that came with this thing. Let's see. Yeah, that's about right. So I'm going to throw these in and then hook up a Harbor Freight oil pressure gauge and see what oil pressure we're getting while cranking. Alright, so I have a Harbor Freight oil pressure gauge hooked up with a BSPT adapter, but since I put the spark plugs in, the engine's harder to turn over since it has compression now. So I'm going to go ahead and try to hook up the oil pump, or the fuel pump, put it in a bucket of gas, see if that does anything. Pause. Okay, stop. Alright, I have a little oil pressure gauge set up. I have the fuel pump plugged in and sitting in a little tray of gas. Give it some cranks, see if that gas level moves. Alright, since I think we have fuel flow, I'm now going to focus on oil pressure. Sounds like she's trying to start, and there is oil in the oil pressure gauge line. All right, now's the time. Where's that fuel coming from? Oh no, a hard line is broken. Where's that fuel coming from? Oh no, a hard line is broken. Alright, I don't really know where I left off filming last night, but I know that there is a large fuel leak, which I just remedied by actually tightening the fuel pump housing to the hard line. And it didn't retain coolant or water, which it still doesn't. I think it's the radiator, but I'll have to peek. And the valve cover was on, so I could not tell if oil was getting to the top of the head. So right now, I've already run it, so I already know that this has all been dispelled, except for the radiator. Not sure about that. But yeah, let's see. The fuel rail was smoking earlier. So but I think that was just residual stuff. And you can see there's a little bit of pressure from the radiator cap. Power steering works great. I'd like to fix that tick before running it anymore, but that's up next. I'm gonna pull those bad adjuster screws and see about that. But all in all, got it running great. I'm hoping that this pressure is just from it bleeding, but we will see. So yeah, so far very satisfied. With the die and a grinder, I attempted to unmushroom these, and I'm going to go ahead and install them and flash the valves and see if it's any quieter. Got it pretty sewing machine-like. I'm happy with that. Yeah, I think it's a pretty good transformation. Pretty much figured out that it was savable last Saturday when I saw that gunk under the valve cover. And it's just been a roller coaster since then, but I'm happy to say I think it's running really great. The only part that I put on it that was not already here is the fuel pump, because the old fuel pump was bad. It was sitting in rotten fuel for 10 years, and that's it so far. But I'm not really going to do a next part of this. Right now I have all the information that I can get from this vehicle without throwing more parts at it, but once I get the tune-up going, and Amazon has been delaying the tank sealer I ordered due to COVID-19, I guess. So I'm going to muriatic acid and PUR15 the fuel tank so that I can reinstall it instead of running just, you can't see it's dark, but I have the fuel pump in a dish of gas. So once I get the tank installed and the engine tuned up, I'd start focusing on other stuff. In this short week, I have taken it from like 60 PSI compression max and 0 and 3 cylinders to about 120 average, lowest cylinder being 100 I believe, or 90, but that's probably up now that it actually has some oil going through it and has some heat in the rings and stuff, so I'm very excited about that. So I was pretty disappointed in this thing. I thought the engine was boned for sure and that I have to rebuild it, but very pleased to report that it seems savable. So yep, thank you for watching again, and don't forget to like and subscribe, leave a comment. Got the gas tank installed.